And the winner is Disco Elysium.
Disco Elysium swept a bunch of honors during the 2019 Game Awards, which may give gamers the impression that it's an easily approachable narrative romp. Some people are just going to bounce right off, and I understand the trepidation. It's not a typical RPG, it's not even a typical CRPG. There are no combat encounters, squad maneuvers, or destiny reshaping choices. The whole affair is mired in implication and open to interpretation. Cerebral, conversational, and playfully sardonic, like Metamorphosis or BoJack Horseman.
Do you remember the scent of your childhood?
Disco Elysium is all about constructing and deconstructing our identities, confronting who we've become in the process. Okay, fine. I guess it's really about two cops solving a murder, but only in the way that Divinity Original Sin or Night in the Woods are about solving a murder. The grisly crime is the impetus for more significant narrative exploration, so for the protagonist of Disco Elysium, getting the corpse out of the tree forces him on a journey to rebuild his consciousness. See, before he got any investigating done, the detective went on a week-long binge, blacking out on an incalculable mound of drugs and booze. This brain-annihilating bender did so much damage that it erased everything he knew about who he was before. With fleeting access to his past life and no way to undo the substance-induced amnesia, he must pull himself together in more ways than one. As the detective pursues self-discovery, the town of Martinez reacts to his reinvention. Let's consider the most tangible component of this man's persona, Lieutenant W. Fetor of the Revachol Citizens Militia. He's a cop.
Can't talk, pig! She's coming up strong! Throwing rocks!
When investigating, he can belligerently demand the respect of others like a law enforcement superstar. In adopting such an arrogant police persona, he'll quickly realize how little power the law has in the parts of town where it isn't respected. The local union has more muscle and firepower than the RCM, effectively robbing police of their monopoly on violence. Without the coercive force needed to brutalize the town into submission, the detective actually has to use investigative skills. Intellect, diligence, organization, critical thinking, all the boring cop stuff that gets in the way of paramilitary cosplay and psychopathic vigilante fetishism. If analytical skills aren't getting the job done, then cooperation may yield better results. Apologize for any disturbances. Be a little generous and show some moral flexibility toward the struggling populace. Not everyone is a vicious manipulator looking to waste your time, and even the most obdurate people will become agreeable when approached with patience. Letting go of any sense of entitlement was paramount to progress. Or you can just keep assaulting kids and wonder why everyone thinks you're an asshole. Of course, Detective Cousteau's identity does not end at his occupation. On top of policing style, our protagonist measures himself using 4 political classifications and 24 different skills across 4 categories. Your base rank determines how many times each skill can be upgraded. These multitudinous traits prompt enthralling conversations that guide how the players interpret Disco Elysium's writing. The skills love to interject and will constantly lend their perspective. When NPCs present cryptic or contradictory ideas, the skills can spot inconsistencies and speculate on what's left unsaid. Sometimes the advice is helpful, sometimes it's muddled and conflicted. It's just as likely for pain threshold to snap at perception, or for suggestion to disagree with half-light. They all rush to offer their take, whether we like it or not, but we can bolster the skills we find most helpful. In among a swirl of skill, style, and politics, the gendarmerie is confronted with thoughts. These cognitive invaders are the culmination of his interactions with the world, patterns that form around his choices and attitudes. Place one in his head, let it ferment for 1 to 5 hours, and partake in what comes out the other side. Depending on the brew, the amnesiac may raise his skills, obtain higher skill caps, or gain XP boost by adopting a political stance. Though not always beneficial, the outcomes of these thoughts can be informative. You see, these elements alone are already a fascinating examination of identity, but the most resonant and impactful commentary comes when you examine the gameplay in the context of narrative and characterization. The protagonist expresses his personal views as you prune and reshape his thoughts, beliefs, and personas. Skills and their internal influence become stronger. His reactions to the world more closely reflect his character, and his thoughts reward commitment. After all, steadily upholding these identities makes his job easier. The obvious examples are political. Mazovian socioeconomics and indirect modes of taxation reward consistent identification with communist and ultra-liberal ideologies, respectively. For the player, navigating the world depends on this consistency, getting XP boosts, raising skill ceilings, pocketing extra cash, and feeding his preferred skills. Thoughts like actual art degree or Wompty Dumpty Dom Center, yes, that is really what it's called, even provide XP when specific skills speak up. It's consequently better to upgrade the skills associated with certain thoughts, since empowering their influence directly enhances task completion. As this relationship between personality and progress morphs into what RPG players call a build, harmful compulsions start to set in. Sure, cryptid obsession and hustle culture fanaticism earn bemused reactions, but you may also commit to being a racist and end up ranting about microcephalic skulls, degeneracy, or the Wuhan virus. Now, you could spend a skill point to unlearn advanced race theory, but then you think about that rhetoric bonus and decide, racism's bad and all, but it gives me this subtle benefit, so I'm not sure the effort to unlearn it is worthwhile. And then what do you know? You've discovered white privilege. Or I guess it'd be Occidental privilege. I don't know, I barely paid attention to Measurehead's rant.
The influence of the ham sandwich race is rank.
Deviating from the skills and thoughts you've invested in is anxiety-provoking and drives home how the player lives and operates at the mercy of the identity they've cultivated. The greatest challenge to player agency, however, comes from the detective's substance use, the domain of electrochemistry. This particular voice is relentless, constantly insisting that everything would go more smoothly with a drink. The mysteries of the world would unravel themselves with a hit of something nice, and the daily malaise would be eased with a smoke. This unsubtle prodding ties into the mechanics behind drugs and alcohol in Disco Elysium. For the easily replenishable cost of health or morale, alcohol, cigarettes, and drugs temporarily increase the caps for one skill category, allowing players to surpass their original limits. While I choose to roleplay abstinence, I wondered why the game didn't penalize me for intoxication. That changed when I equipped the thought, Wasteland of Reality, the sobriety thought. See, most games focus on the start of an addiction. You take a drug, your body craves it, and you ache for more. But the detective isn't a new substance user. He's a late-stage alcoholic.
I bet your alcohol use has made you into a scared little pussy, Holmes. But don't worry, everything's gonna be alright.
His body is so used to intoxication that it can't operate when he's sober. He's not looking to get high, he's trying to offset the perpetual withdrawal that ravages his mind and body. When sobriety stuck after 20 hours, he took a skill penalty, and the alcohol lost its effect. He overcame his addiction, and his job got harder. My character suffered a tangible gameplay disadvantage because he got clean. And that's when it hit me. The players were always at the mercy of drink, not because it hurt us, but because we needed it to sustain this lifestyle. Drinking made it possible to open locked skill checks again. Impossible checks were attainable when he got high and could spend more skill points. The world made sense when he smoked. Without chemicals, he failed again and again, dragged helplessly through the world by a hunger for content. Volition said to stay sober, but skill checks wouldn't budge without a drink. If I wanted to progress, I needed my character to relapse. He didn't unlearn racism because it benefited the build. He unlearned sobriety because addiction unlocked more content. But that's what makes Disco Elysium so brilliant. Engaging with the mechanics puts us in the mind of the protagonist, a man who needs to interact with people's problems, who cannot tolerate secrets being kept from him, who pokes and prods at everyone he meets until they spill their guts before him. And the player's thirst for RPG content played right into his true addiction, creating the closure in the world that he cannot create in himself. I mean, we just berated a woman into giving us a quest about her missing husband. That's not normal. The detective is compelled to seek others' mysteries, even if doing so is literally killing him. So much of his own identity is wrapped up in unending quests for solutions, connections, and the global cohesion promised by his inland empire. One detail the amnesiac cop manages to uncover about himself is his police record. The man has closed 216 cases, which even for his many years in the RCM is a lot. As the game progresses, however, that large number seems less indicative of his skill as an officer and more reflective of his turbulent consciousness. This investigative craving bleeds into his personal life, especially his romantic relationships, where such incessant picking can drain even the most steadfast of lovers. He loses himself in his search for answers to things that don't need solving.
Thrashing around in that high conductivity state of yours, bumping into things and acting like a clown? Who are you kidding?
To those who try to love him, this amounts to self-absorption prodded by toxin, a routine that feeds the appetites of an emotional parasite. The protagonist's time in Martinez placed him squarely in the path of people just like him, desperate and insecure individuals hinging their identities on self-imposed demands. Moral, the cryptozoologist, hunts a seemingly non-existent beast to prove to his wife that her love wasn't wasted on him. The pigs wanted to be a police officer, a single idea imprinted in her degenerating mind. Suna, the programmer, is literally searching for 2 millimeters of nothing. Aiding in their impossible goals enabled my longing for closure, as I enabled their Sisyphean quests, codependence, together. But that's what he does. That's what we do. We peel back the world and attach our emotions to the satisfaction of solution, even when the game declares openly that doing so will only disappoint us. We entertain his demands while pulling the world into his chaotic singularity, barely noticing how exhausting, mercurial, and irreparably sick that makes him. Consequently, she has nothing left to say. No chorus of pleas or bargains that will fix what broke. No silly little scenario we can dream up will bring him real comfort. Apologetics have failed. The figurines do nothing. The dread warned of by the half-light came, and he cracked. His body betrayed him, and his mind sought to black out the truth. The truth that quests cannot soothe our suffering. That failing to confront the harm we cause others only guarantees that we will do so again, as over-involvement breeds a lifetime's worth of newfound misery. That every day, we sink into the warm primordial blackness rather than face the uncertainty of leaving our pursuits behind.
Solving your little crossword puzzles, doing your tasks, crossing names off your lists, trying to become some sort of world detector. It won't make it okay. It won't put smoke back in her mouth.
The last page of my script probably gave you the impression that Disco Elysium is a nihilistic and pretentious game. I get it. To make sense of the game's finale, I produced an Egghead-style rant about my experience. Yet even with my verbosity, the actual game is approachable and quietly hopeful. Despite its musings on the suffering of consciousness, the game has few pretenses. The developers sought to avoid any elitism, even as the conversation topics deepened. The game takes time to repeat itself, offering multiple explanations for the ideas it's chewing on. The world is considerate to both the amnesiac cop and the confused gamer playing him. Disco Elysium will even undercut its own cleverness by telegraphing any ludonarrative chicanery. So confident is the writing that it actively spoils whole plot points right from the start. But that's really the marker of a great game. Fulfillment comes from experiencing the story as the detective, not passively acknowledging the plot outline. Only when we've walked a week in this man's shoes can we understand the pain that precipitated his blackout. I know some gamers will balk at the lack of choice when playing as Haye Dubois, how they can't make his mind work differently, how they can't free him from the mistakes he's made. I'd ask them to push through the discomfort with their lack of agency. Failure begets not judgment, but empathy. The goal isn't to shame you for being a bad person, quite the opposite. Disco Elysium steeps itself in melancholy because it understands human pain. It approaches your flaws with patience. Accepting failure is the game's main antidote to depressive rumination. A hostile manager demands money, a union boss consistently outwits you, and the locals take joy in embarrassing you. But the whole time you're encouraged to, pardon the pun, roll with it. And as with real life, failure is also darkly amusing in hindsight. Like, whoops, I let the murder suspect know I'm an addict, an unprofessional mess, and a hopeless romantic. No ma'am, don't go. I want to have investigation with you. Disco Elysium has many funny moments like this, from brisk absurdity to outright comedy. Your mind engages in strange conversations, Kim plays along with inside jokes, delinquent children spout gut-busting monologues, and kicking trash cans produces the expected result. It's this melange of patience and amusement where Disco Elysium finds humanity. The pain is unbearable, and closure is a lie, but we find contentedness in the moments of reprieve. You may be asking, even in the face of dark comic relief, what in the detective's elaborate web of anguish could possibly be considered a reprieve? Yes, while it's true that most of our time with this man involves juggling one tragedy after another, I think the key to his salvation lies in the title. Disco? Well, that's pretty straightforward. It's a soul-inspired musical fusion of black and queer urban subculture named after the clubs where people dance to it. But what's Elysium? Put simply, Elysium is the portion of the Greek underworld that resembles the Christian heaven. It's the domain of souls favored by the gods. In the Aeneid, poet Virgil described Elysium as a paradisal eternity where the greatest of Grecian athletes, artists, priests, and warriors joyously carried out the works they performed on Earth. In a game about a man haunted by his compulsions, I think this version of the afterlife would appeal to the developers. Elysium allows its members to peacefully engage with their earthly trades, a more blissful version of their living selves. One of the only quests with a plainly positive outcome involved helping some travelers open a dance club in an abandoned church. The drifters planned to fund their discotheque by selling drugs, but if you grill them for information, pass a logic check, and successfully uncover their plans, then you can talk them out of it. Upon your insistence, and despite the difficulty, they agree to start legit. It's one remarkable moment when your need to uncover secrets actually helped people get better, when your true self didn't drive someone away. Starting up the nightclub is not a climax. It, like much of everything else, was a diversion from the murder investigation. It had little bearing on the conclusion of the narrative, nor did it drastically alter Detective Dubois' fate. But the opportunity to dance to a beat offered a cathartic revolution. A body ravaged by time and chemical abuse moved with precision and grace. An imploding mind unified in reverence to the sound. A life characterized by self-injury gave itself a moment of bliss. Disco Elysium is not looking to change humans on a fundamental level. The game wouldn't have built its systems around approximating the human mind only to repudiate it in the end. It's not like that's a real choice anyway. Our ideal selves aren't divorced from our flaws. However, Elysium represents the promise of a healthy human consciousness. Detective Dubois used his deductive skills in a venture that was transformative for all involved. While he may have failed Elysium before by descending into his worst habits, a random act of self-discovery brought him back in the right direction. In among the tragicomic tempest of our lives, we find validation in the healthy expression of ourselves. Free from the self-consciousness of failure, free from the dark paths we're pushed down by the external world, we embrace these blissful reflections of who we are and who we can be, dancing away in our Disco Elysium.
On the coast of the Martinez Inlet, in a small weather-beaten stave church, built 380 years ago by settlers from the Occident, most likely to guard against an anomaly at its center, an officer of the RCM is contorting his body into idiotically rigid shapes as he invents the future of dance music. It's the hardest anyone has ever danced.
I am La Rebachelière. I am the city.